ruling out the possibility of voting for the budget. That's starting to worry me, but I think it's them that are misreading the mood of Canadians. If an election is necessary, we would obviously, reluctantly, because we don't think Canadians want an election, but election there will be.
With opinion polls all over the country indicating that the Liberal popularity slides further and faster with every passing day, the Liberal government has decided to appeal directly to the Canadian people. Welcome back to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. The Liberal government is terrified that the Canadian population will embrace an election that will have their buyer's remorse, and then will finally come to understand that the Liberal government is not going to be able to accomplish anything that they claimed they were going to be doing way back in February or in March or in April, when they were terrifying you with the specter of Donald Trump. Now we come forward many months, and Mark Carney's government has done nothing but the same thing that the Liberal government has been doing for years, which of course is what the Conservatives and conservative voices told you was going to happen. So it's not a surprise to many of us. The government, of course, is scared. They do not have the support of the people anymore, and they were really hoping to get through another year of paychecks and perks, and maybe some more legislation that will limit the ability of Canadians to talk to one another before they would be called to an election. The Bloc has indicated that they're not going to be supporting the budget. Of course, if Pierre Poilievre sticks true to form, he's not going to support the budget either, even though there is an indication that today they are going to meet to talk about it. There are signs that we can see from the Liberal government, the cracks in their confidence, and how they're using their media now to try to cast shade. Not to tell you how wonderful Mark Carney is. No. It's all about telling you how horrible Pierre Poilievre is. Before we get into all of this, I want to encourage you to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, double check to make sure you're still subscribed. Share this with all of your socials. Let's get into this. Of course, we're going to be looking at the Liberal government's budget that's coming up. This is what's got their cage rattled. Now, Mark Carney has made a string of promises his entire time that he was going to somehow be the trade and negotiator master of all of Canada's history. He was asked about trade with the United States, and he was asked about trade with India in the scrum yesterday at time of recording it, and his answers are very telling. Let's hear what they are first.
Ongoing discussions with the Americans, and I wouldn't overplay it. I'm looking forward to see the president at APEC in Korea, but we're going to be seeing lots of other countries, and one of our core elements of our strategy is diversifying trade. That's why we're going to Asia. You saw the Indonesian trade deal. We're in talks with ASEAN, which is the group of countries that I'm meeting with in Kuala Lumpur, and then more broadly at APEC, including with China.
What about trade with India? Do you think that we can...
Now, he's talking about how the budget is a problem. Canadians are losing faith in the Liberal government, which is smart. They should have never put any faith in them in the first place. It's 10 years of the same people, but nonetheless, he pointedly ignores the reporter who's asking him about India so that he could say that he has to give a question in French, answer one of the French team. Now, everybody is aware there is very few French reporters. I'm sure there's a lot of reporters in there that speak French, but there's only really CBC Radio Canada that's represented in the room. Perhaps TVA is there, but for the most part, it's CBC Radio Canada. And so waiting for someone to ask him in French to kind of say to the Canadians that I'm balancing the questions is a bit bizarre. He could have answered the question of India in French, for example, should he have so desired to. You're talking about how I wouldn't put too much stock in meeting with the Americans when I go to Korea. Of course you wouldn't put much stock. You're going to be the little boy in the corner who everybody is going to be ignoring. The Koreans are firmly in the trade deals with the United States of America. Some of their country's largest organizations, like largest industries, are building power plants and building manufacturing facilities inside of the United States of America as you hear my voice. Then he tries to throw it over to Malaysia. Oh, we're going to go down and talk to I mean, Justin Trudeau went down there as well. I don't know why he believes that you and I think that it's better for him to go to these various countries while we still have a lot of economic problems at home. Problems that he could be working on if he was simply repeal the 9 laws that are in the way of development in this country. Another clue that I know the Liberal government is not following through is Anita Anand went to both India and China. They talked up all of their press, all of their media was saying how Anita Anand was having a great negotiation, a great talk. They're going to put the diplomatic, members back in each particular country. It's going to be fuzzy and warm. However, when he was asked directly a question about India, he pointedly ignored that. He could have answered that question and still answered a question in French. He could have done a lot of things, but what he chose to do was ignore the question. Of course, India right now is being cozied up to by Donald Trump. They're talking about how India supplies a lot of money to Russia because India purchases Russian oil, and they don't want that to happen, and they're putting in some chipsets in India, and the United States of America and India have very good trade negotiations, again, because Donald Trump saw where the markets are. And the Canadian government has had a feud going on with India. Of course, there's no trade negotiation yet. We still haven't even put diplomats back in. There's nobody in the consulates. There's nobody doing any of that. And he ignored that question because there is no development there. And then he's going to go to Korea and he says, don't put too much stock in meeting Donald Trump there. So he's not even in steady, constant, deep negotiations right now. He's like, well, maybe I'll run into him when we're in Korea. And then I'm going to go right over to Malaysia and we're going to talk with all those countries that are down there. This looks to me like he's doing nothing. This looks to me like he made a lot of promises he's not keeping. And to say that he's going to be able to solve that by putting Canadians in debt, no, that's not the situation at all. The Liberal government knows, however, that they're falling short. And when asked about the budget, when asked about it, the House Leader, MP McKinnon, he gave a very telling answer.
So I just want to say, because I haven't said this in English yet, that we're 2 weeks from the budget. I think that what I'm seeing in Parliament worries me. We have 2 opposition parties, principally, that aren't taking this matter very seriously. Canadians are looking for certainty. We had an election 6 months ago. Canadians are looking for predictability, stability, and especially a plan. We intend to present a plan to Canadians to deal with this very critical moment in our history.
No, Canadians are looking for jobs. They're looking for inexpensive food. They're looking for an abundance of housing. They're looking for cheap gas. They're looking for things that they can afford. They're looking for a standard of living that doesn't leave them worried constantly, night and day and night. They're looking for a standard of living that allows for them to wish well as their children move out of their home, their adult children move out. To say that you have a plan, oh my God, the Liberal government and their plans. It's all I ever hear from this government is how they have a plan. What's funny is how none of these plans ever come to fruition. None of these plans ever actually do anything but sit on paper. There's never any success to their plan. There's only ever talk. That's all the Liberal government does while they sit around and laugh as Canadian standard of living drops with every passing minute. These guys are worried because they know that they don't have the support of the Canadian population, and they know that they can't campaign on getting anything done. What can they campaign on? Empty promises?
And what we're seeing is our opposition parties, the Bloc Québécois, who, without having even read the budget, eliminate the possibility that they will support it, and the Conservatives making just ludicrous demands with respect to the budget.
It sounds like you're worried about maybe Canada going to another election. Is that a realistic possibility Canadians should expect?
We have a minority government, but we believe we have a mandate. And when I see opposition parties not ruling out the possibility of voting for the budget, that's starting to worry me, but I think it's them that are misreading the mood of Canadians. If an election is necessary, we would obviously reluctantly, because we don't think Canadians want an election.
I'm confused. Is it the Bloc and the Conservatives that are misreading the temperature in the room? Or are you worried that they're going to trigger an election? Both things cannot be true. If you're not worried about the way the Canadian population is going to respond, if you think that the Canadian population is somehow in support of the Liberal government, then them triggering the election should only help you. If, on the other hand, you're worried that the Canadian population will look you right in the eye and see your government has done nothing, the problems have gotten worse. Our standard of living has gotten worse. My food prices have shot up again, another 4% in the last 90 days, which puts them year over year over 40%. What can you say to that? You're going to try to blame that on Pierre Poilievre? You're going to try to blame that on MP Blanchet? Who is to blame for that? So I think Canadians are quite willing, ready, and able to remove this government that has done nothing, has accomplished nothing. Well, I shouldn't say that. They have done some things. They have destroyed our economy, destroyed our standard of living.
But election there will be. It's the opposition parties who have that decision in their hands.
Why not accept the Bloc's demands?
Well, which ones? The one that said it's unimaginable that they vote for the budget, the negotiable demands, or the non-negotiable
I would say
demands?
the negotiable.
It's pretty hard to follow.
Of course, this is a trick they've been using since 2018. For some reason, they can't keep up. Everybody in the room is a lawyer, probably like 90% of the people in the building are lawyers, and they know how to make their demands. They know how to say these things. But all of a sudden, when it comes to the Liberal government, nobody can speak clearly. Donald Trump can't speak clearly. Nobody can speak clearly. Maybe it's not the fact that they can't speak clearly. Maybe you simply cannot keep up.
You'll have to ask the NDP about the NDP.
Haven't you been having those conversations?
What I just said is that the Prime Minister has had conversations, Mr. Champagne has had conversations, other ministers have had conversations, and we will continue to listen to what they have to say.
Do you think opposition parties are bluffing?
I have no idea. You'll have to ask them.
Now, that was a slip right there. That was a tell, because he's the House leader for the Liberal Party. His primary job is to talk to the other parties. That's like one of the biggest things that he does. So he should be the one that is talking to the NDP, not the Prime Minister, not the Finance Minister, Champagne. This man's job is to talk to the House leader, not talk to Pierre Poilievre, but to talk to Andrew Scheer, who I believe was the Conservative House leader. I don't know who the NDP House leader is, but I do understand that all of them have it. The only leader that they would speak to directly would be Elizabeth May. I mean, because she's a one-man, like she's the only person for the Green Party, so she probably has to wear every hat there is. But I know the Bloc has a House leader that is not the leader. I know that the Conservatives have a House leader who is not the leader. I know the NDP have a House leader who is not the leader. And I know the Liberals have a House leader, that guy right there, who is not the leader. So if he was being honest with Canadians, if he was being truthful with actually what's going on behind, he would have said, yeah, no, I spoke with them. I should imagine that he has spoke with them. It's just that he doesn't want to admit out loud that they're in the middle of a thing right now. And they believe that even if they could an election gets triggered, they can gain back more seats from the Liberal Party, because everybody is disillusioned with the lack of productivity, the lack of results. Everybody sees the American economy booming. Everybody knows somebody who has moved across the border and is now living a good life, having a good job. Everybody knows that, including the Liberal Party, who wants nothing more than to stall. I can show you one other factor to indicate to you just how desperate they are. I picked this up from ipolitics.ca because they were the one that I could click on. And though it's being announced by a number of agencies, Carney to deliver primetime pre-budget preview of a plan to build a stronger economy, which I'm sure will be the title that he thinks is going to wow everybody. So he's going to go on TV at the most expensive time, prime time, to try to convince Canadians that the budget, that they have to support the budget, that if they don't support the budget, if the people that they have elected don't support the budget, they're going to trigger an election. He's going to try and scare you. He's going to try to make you empty promises. He's going to try to tell you that you've never had it so good. Of course, that's because he doesn't have a clue what you go through. He doesn't have a single solitary understanding of the amount of things that you are up against. He only understands what's happening in his elbows up world. And the fact that many seniors in this country are having a hard time making ends meet is not going to help him. But he feels that if he goes on TV, he can appeal, he can beg, he can grovel for people to tell their MPs to support the budget because you're not interested in having an election. That's the only ploy they have left. The far left is getting very, very desperate. They have all kinds of ploys and tricks going on. This is not the only one that came out today at time of recording. There's another headline that the CBC is running, which also is nothing more than just an attempt to try to convince you that it's better for you to vote, to continue to support the party that has brought so much hardship to your life. On the same day as this desperate ploy by the Liberal government to come on primetime TV, the CBC is reporting that a whole bunch of Conservatives are doubting whether or not Pierre Poilievre's the man to lead them into the next election. So we can see now what we're up against here. But let's have a look. Now, I got this article from the CBC, and I assure you that when I want to understand what the Conservatives are going through, the last place I'm going to look is the CBC, who do nothing but talk all kinds of hatred against the against the Conservatives and anybody who votes Conservatives and anybody who doesn't vote Liberal, for that matter. Some Conservative MPs doubt Pierre Poilievre's leadership after a podcast remark about the RCMP. Poilievre said Trudeau broke the law, called the RCMP leadership despicable. Of course, they're referring to the interview Pierre Poilievre gave to Northern Perspective. I've watched it. I encourage you to go over to Northern Perspective's YouTube channel and watch the full interview with Pierre Poilievre, where you will see that the Conservatives, or excuse me, the CBC is cherry picking a bunch of words and trying to spin it to make it look like something that it isn't. However, I don't think that Pierre Poilievre is going to back down on the idea. And when Ryan from Northern Perspective did a response to the attack by the CBC and CTV on his channel, he very thoroughly laid out the case for Pierre Poilievre's statement, the reason that we saw the RCMP Stonewall cabinet, committee, and where we saw the RCMP refuse to lay charges and all of the evidence to the contrary. And it's all very thorough, it's all laid out, and I encourage you to go and watch it. What we see here is the CBC doing the same thing they've been trying to do since the summertime, make you think that that the Conservative Party doesn't support Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre's numbers only increased. He might have lost his seat due to rezoning, but the Conservatives gained, I think, a full 5 percentage points in addition to 20 new members of parliament. So the situation on the ground is much different than the reality in the minds of the CBC and the Liberal Party. I'm just going to read a little bit of it because it's just really hilarious the way that they try to make you think that they're the experts on what the Conservatives are thinking. Oh yeah, the CBC. I know. After Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre blasted RCMP leadership on a podcast, some party members are questioning whether they will continue to support him. Of course, this is something we've heard from the CBC from the very beginning. 5 Conservative caucus members who spoke to Radio Canada said Poilievre has not changed his message enough since the last election campaign and is not projecting an image befitting a prime minister. Oh, it's 5 of them spoke to Radio Canada about how the person that they were running with somehow, and now they're elected, is somehow not befitting the prime minister. What an interesting term! Like, what an interesting choice of words. It's almost like the CBC is terrified that the current prime minister is going to be replaced. Radio Canada is not naming the sources. Convenient. So they can speak freely about internal party matters. Yeah, because that's the way the Conservatives function. That's the way they deal with things on the right. We always make sure that we never say our opinion. No, that's actually not the case at all. That's how they do things on the left. But that's not on the right. If we're annoyed, we say it out loud. And everybody around us that's on the right allows us to say it out loud, which of course is the biggest problem that we have, because we allowed the left to say things out loud that make no sense for years now. Anyway, in total, Radio Canada spoke to 10 conservative sources. So not just 5, it's 10 now. It's double that much, 10 of them across the country, including 7 caucus members. So at the beginning it was 5, and now it's 7. Well. 4 of the sources are unsure whether they will support Pierre Poilievre in a confidence vote this January after having supported him in recent years. I tell you, it's getting really bad, I think, for the Conservatives. How Pierre Poilievre's popularity is 2 points above Mark Carney's, and how Pierre Poilievre led the Conservatives to the most seats they've had in quite a while, and how he got the Liberal government to overturn the carbon tax, and so many things that Pierre Poilievre has moved forward on that have positively affected this country. And yet these 7 caucus members, 4 of them, they're not sure whether or not they continue to support this leader. It's completely irresponsible to say that former Prime Minister should be imprisoned, one of the sources told Radio Canada in French. Why is that? Because on the far left, they think that the person at the top should be venerated. There should be statues to them in the streets. That's why every time we topple a dictatorship, statues in the streets are the first thing that get torn down, because that's how the far left thinks. They think in a way of worshiping their leadership. There is nobody in the Conservative Party that doesn't think Justin Trudeau deserves to go to prison for his actions with Judy Raybould, for his actions with Abba Khan. I mean, there is a whole bunch of people that think that there's a lot of corruption and that that it's a 2-tiered system. I ran a poll. 99% of people, for example, in Canada feel that there's a 2-tiered justice system, especially when it comes to the Liberal Party. But the CBC, of course, doesn't care what you think. They don't let their article get in the way of the reality. I just wanted to show you how this article starts and how you and I are supposed to now consider whether or not somebody else in the Conservative Party, we don't know who. It's 5, it's 7, it's 4. We're not sure. It could be everybody. It could be nobody. Of course, there's so much inconsistency in the article because I doubt any of it's true. I'm sure that it is all made up. It's designed to it's a red herring designed to try to make you lose confidence in Pierre Poilievre, because Mark Carney doesn't feel that his government is going to survive this budget, which is going to be horrendous. The amount of money Carney wants to put on our shoulders, the amount of debt that he wants to incur is going to be just stratospheric. But he doesn't care because he doesn't have to pay for it. Then he can do whatever he wants. And I don't believe that any of the opposition parties should support an irresponsible budget. If Carney comes forward and says, I'm going to repeal all 9 laws and here's this horrible budget, I can see that might get some support. But to say that I'm going to put this massive crushing debt onto everyday ordinary Canadians, all the while making it so that they can't get a job and have a place to live, that I hope to put them so desperate that they'll do nothing but want to either join the United States or beg me to build them a 15-minute shoebox tiny little apartment, 50 stories in the air. That's not the life that Canadians deserve. That's not the life that people come here from other parts of the world to live. And if the Carney government doesn't want to provide that to us, I think it's, our responsibility to say we're going to put somebody in there that will provide that to us. And if the boomers want to vote from Florida, let them. But I think that we can all agree it's time for Canada to put leadership in there that's going to solve the problem, not talk, not offer a plan, not try to put us into crushing debt that will only make a very few people in this country wealthy and harm the rest of us for generation upon generation, generations that do not have any money because the Liberal government has made it so we can't get any of our best jobs up and running. That's just my opinion. You can let me know what your opinion is down in the comments. I'm going to wrap here. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.